Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Sunflower Sutras. I'm your host, Tara. I'd like to start today's episode by reading selected verses from Percy Shelley's poem, Hymn to the Intellectual Beauty, sections 4 through 6. Hope, love, and self-esteem like clouds depart, and come for some uncertain moments lent. Man were immortal and omnipotent, didst thou, unknown and awful as thou art, keep with thy glorious train firm state within his heart. Thou messenger of sympathies that wax and wane in lovers' eyes, thou that to human thought art nourishment, like darkness to a dying flame. Depart not as thy shadow came, depart not, lest the grave should be, like life and fear, a dark reality. While yet a boy, I sought for ghosts, and sped through many a listening chamber, cave, and ruin, and starlight wood with fearful steps pursuing hopes of high talk with the departed dead. I called on poisonous names with which our youth is fed. I was not heard, I saw them not. When musing deeply on the lot of life at this sweet time when winds are wooing all vital things that wake to bring news of birds and blossoming, sudden thy shadow fell on me. I shrieked and clasped my hands in ecstasy. I vowed that I would dedicate my powers to thee and thine. Have I not kept that vow? With beating heart and streaming eyes, even now I call the phantoms of 1,000 hours, each from his voiceless grave. They have visioned bowers of studious zeal or love's delight, outwatched with me the envious night. They know that never joy illumed my brow, unlinked with hope that thou wouldest free this world from its dark slavery, that thou, O awful loveliness, wouldst give whatever these words cannot express. And with us now is Duane Herrmann.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
We're delighted to have you. Would you like to divulge a little bit about yourself for our listeners?
All right. Sometimes when I'm meeting new people, they say, how long have you been here? And one answer is that from the day I was born. The other answer is somewhere in the 1870s when my great-great-grandfather first came, because we haven't left since then. So it's a various answers. So, I was born here. I grew up on a farm outside of town, and it was pretty isolated. And I went to Washburn. Also went to Hayes and took a class in Pori, but mostly I'm Topeka. Yeah, I've traveled around, but I keep coming back.
And how long have you considered yourself a writer?
Well, learning to write was a process on the road because I had been making up stories far before I could read or write. I have a vague memory of when I was a really little kid, we would have family dinners at my grandparents'. And I was the only kid because I was the first one. And so there was nobody to play with. But my grandma had some old comic books from somebody else. And so I would go down to the basement because they had a bed down there. They slept there in the wintertime because it was warmer. And I would look through the comic books that had picture comics. And some of them were about little insects that lived in broken teacups and things like that. And that just fascinated me because it was little stuff like I was little. And I wanted the stories to keep on going. And so one time I was looking at the pictures and followed the story and had a dream about the little people in the stories. And when I woke up, I wanted that to continue. So I just made it up myself. And from then on, I've been making stories. And every night in bed, I would work on a story and continue the plot. And then when I finally was able to learn to read, which was after the second grade because I'm dyslexic, and so that was really, really hard. And I had a private tutor who lived down the road and that I had to walk a mile in the heat. But anyway, so that was a very experience which I've written about because most people don't remember how they learned to read because you happen so young. So once I could read, then it was easier to write. And so then I've been writing since then, and it was not looked upon with favor in my growing up years, so I couldn't write in the daytime. I could only do it at night after bedtime, and there was no way that could be a light, so I had to teach myself to write in the dark.
Wow.
And keep the lines separate on the paper. But it satisfied that need to get the words out, to get the stories out. So that little skill I have found amazingly helpful when I'm driving on lonely Kansas highways and roads, and I have written some of my best stuff when I was writing and driving because I don't need to look at the paper.
Oh my goodness.
And people say you can't do that, and say, you watch my face and you see this blank piece of paper, and then I'll write something and they're watching my face, and then I'm done and I say, see, look at this. And there's a poem on the paper. And they've seen that I did not take my eyes off the road. And they say, well, I guess you can. So
I can't even write tidbits of, when you've got this really great idea in your dream space and when you wake up immediately and you're like, keep it? I want to write that down immediately. I can't even get to the phone fast enough and type it up on my phone.
That's why you have the paper right there beside the bed. Otherwise it don't work.
Oh, that is fascinating. Oh my. I've never heard that before.
I don't know that very many people do that, actually.
I don't think so.
No.
So it sounds like for you, it's always just been a process of entertaining yourself.
Yeah.
I've heard a couple of your poetry pieces throughout the years. And what I've always been drawn to about your work is you talk a lot about historical events. And as a history major, that of course tickles my fancy.
Oh, yeah, because I am a historian also.
Yes.
So I have written some histories, yes.
So what is it nowadays as an adult that you really like, your passion, things you're drawn to when it comes to writing?
I don't know. I just write about whatever comes to mind. I have now a published science fiction story, which is the first long science fiction thing I've done. And the name of it is Escape from Earth, the Journal of a Planetary Pioneer. And it's published in Canada by this really big name place called Ricky's Backyard, which I never heard of. And anyway, that's a whole other thing. But
it is available on Amazon.
Yes, it's available on Amazon. Some people find that easier to navigate. And if 1,000 copies sell by the end of 2018, they'll make it paper. Right now, it's an ebook, which I can understand. So I'm encouraging people to go buy it and look at it.
The name one more time?
Escape from Earth, the Journal of a Planetary Pioneer.
On Amazon. Keep a lookout for it.
Mm-hmm. And other things I've done, I guess I'm more interested in exploring fiction because I have written some, but less than other things. I've written some short stories, which I'm now working on collecting in a book. 2 of them were published in Inkscape way back, and others are published on the internet in some other places, but they're not all published in the U.S., and they're not all in print, and I relate to print more because I'm a print person. I got to touch it. And so I thought it would be nice to bring these together like Scattered Children. And I found this title. Instator Gleg is the title. It's 2 words. And my children say, Dad, pick something people can remember. Oh, but this is unusual. You can remember it. They are English words that have not been used for centuries. I will read the Oxford English Dictionary, the one that is 6 inches thick that weighs 20, 40 pounds. I read it and I find these words and they're fascinating. And so I'm using some of them and bringing them, like my other book of poetry was ethnographical. That word hasn't been used for centuries, and it means a ground or floor plan, and the ground plan is the earth. And Instator Gleg, Instator means a vendor or representative, and Gleg means understanding. And so the stories convey meanings, and that's the vendor part. Vendor's the wrong word, but anyway, you can look it up. You can look it up because they're in the big dictionaries, not the normal ones. And so anyway, I've gotten excited about working on that again and putting those things together. So I don't really, my passion is just getting words down out of my head because there's so many, and I need to get them out.
Yes.
And they're in different forms. And so that's kind of surprising me.
So in the studio with us right now, you actually have 2 of your collections of poems. If you would like to talk about them, that would be wonderful.
Okay, the first one, big one, I mean, I've done little bitty, tiny chapbooks of just a few poems, and these are collected together. The first one I did is called Prairies of Possibilities.
It's beautiful, by the way. I'm looking at the cover, and the font type for like the title and his name and the picture, it's got this, oh my God, it's gorgeous, people, trust me.
I went through iUniverse, and they did the cover. There were some elements on it that I had them take off, but this looks like Kansas. I mean, this looks like what I'm familiar with. And there's this little road, and then there's the trees and sort of a wheat field in the background, but you don't really know what's behind the trees. You don't really know what you're getting into. Then the next one is newer than that, and it's Ishnographical 173. And the cover photograph, I took it in Haifa, Israel, at the Baha'i World Center where my son was working. And there are terraces up and down the mountainside, and I took a picture of one of the terraces.
I've always wondered this, not to interrupt, but what does the 173 mean?
That's the year.
Oh.
That's one date. The other year is 2016 is also 173. And I wanted to put the copyright date 2016/173, but the publisher said, no, we can't do that.
Oh.
Excuse me, I can do that. So anyway, I didn't publish this, but I worked on it. And so it's got that in the cover because I wanted the number. That was important to me. So anyway, yeah.
So what kind of poetry do you have in these 2 volumes?
Some of them are country things because I drive in the country and I'm a prairie poet because that's where I come from. And some of them are family poems. Both of them have the same kinds. Prairies of Possibilities has more about my family coming to Kansas because my great-grandfather was the last of my ancestors to get here, and yet I have his name, which I find very interesting. And he came from a little village in Germany, and I've been back there, and I've met the family that's still there, and that's just awesome. And so I've written about that and the village and the family there, and then about my life, because it was not happy or fun. I think brutal is probably the best word, and I didn't enjoy being a child. And when my children asked a cousin of mine why she didn't have children, or something like that. And then my daughter, she was like 4. She said, you should have children because it's so much fun for the children. And I thought, I was a good daddy. I did good. So it's about my growing up and struggles and things. And then there's others about just things I've learned about the rest of the world. And
you've traveled a lot.
Well,
you've traveled more than most people.
Okay, to Germany and Israel. A little bit to Canada. So, yeah, there's some people that don't travel a whole lot.
So you talk about writing about family. Before we started the interview, you were telling me a little bit about one of your most recent projects. You just finished a memoir for your aunt.
For my aunt. Yes, she was like a big sister to me. And my mother didn't want to do much of the work in taking care of her kids or the house, so she would call her mother and she would bring down her 2 little sisters. And so my childhood is full of them being in our house. And when my aunt was in her 60s, she learned that she was dyslexic. And all of her life she'd struggled with all the problems that dyslexia causes, but nobody knew it, and there was no identification, and it was always her fault, her problem, and her deficiency. And when she learned this, it was just such a massive relief that she wanted to share that experience and the knowledge with other people. And so she has more difficulty writing things down because she never got tutoring or any help like that. So I had done that, and I was glad for her assistance when I was a kid. So I helped her with it, and she has a high school reunion. So if any of you went to Highland Park, I don't know how many years ago, she may show up with this book, which we have finished and ordered the copies of it. And it's called It's My Time. Because her mother would say, well, you can't do that now. You can do it some other day, or someday it'll be your turn to do it, or whatever. It never happened when she lived with her. And so now it's her time, and she wants to share that. So the process of doing that went much smoother than other projects. So it encouraged me to resume a project of my own, of a collection of short stories that have been published in a variety of places, different websites, and one was published in Australia, and two of them were published here in Inkscape a few decades back. And so I'm putting them all together because people don't see them or don't have access to them. And working on her collection encouraged me to resume work on this one, and so I'm hoping to have that in a few weeks or month or so. Before it gets really cold. That's my goal. Before it gets really cold.
It's all really exciting time for you.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I like this image coming to my mind that dyslexia was something that you struggled with, and it was something that she struggled with, and you're returning the favor, in a sense, to this woman that helped make your life tolerable.
She helped identify the situation, because it wasn't my inability to think. It was just that I think differently, and she thinks differently. And I didn't know until after. I mean, she told me, and that's when I knew, oh, there's a word for this. Oh, other people. Oh, it's not just me. Because the teachers would say, you're not trying hard enough, without realizing how really hard I was trying, because dyslexics see every letter about 20 different ways. And you have to assemble them in a certain combination of those ways for your brain to process them. And nobody else has to work with 20 different forms of every letter.
Yes.
So it's easier for other people. But then there are things that I can see, groups of things. I can see images, like those shapes that are written out on the flat and you have to assemble them in your mind. I got all of those perfect because I can do that. That's fun. It was not a challenge at all. So it's just different things that your brain can do. So yeah, it's returning the favor. It's validating her because she was so put down as she was growing up, and I'm putting her up. I'm saying, yes, your life did have meaning and worth, and I'm willing to help you share it with other people so that other people can learn if they have the same problem, because it's far more widespread than people realize. You just don't talk about it because if you're an adult, you don't want to say you can't read.
Yes.
I don't know where my left side is. I don't know what left means. I know my right side. So every time somebody mentions left, I have to figure, well, this is my right side, so it must be the other one. And that takes longer, but it's a common problem. And with guys, ADD comes with it. And so that's why my thoughts go here and there and just like popcorn all over the place. People can't follow me in conversations sometimes because I'm going here and there. And, well, yeah, don't things come into your head like popcorn? I mean, I guess not, but that's the way life has always been for me.
In the past, I've worked with special needs children, and obviously you only get them for a short period of time. And then you spend the rest of your life as an educator wondering, where are they now? How are they doing? And
did I do any good?
And yes, exactly. But I don't always think about how they are. Like, obviously I think about how they're going to be when they're adults, but you're obviously a very mature person. You're not someone who's, like going through college. You're someone who's lived a full life, and you've lived a full life that was successful, at least by my standards of success.
Some people wonder.
Productive, successful, and by all means, you're a really great writer too.
Oh, well, thank you. I need to hear that because I don't know. I mean, it's just words that come out of me.
More people need to be validated for their efforts.
Yeah.
And your story makes me feel very comforted.
Good, thank you.
If you would do us the honors of reading some of your pieces, that would be wonderful.
Okay. I had just learned about the collection that you passed out at Speakeasy.
The Ichabod Speak Out.
Yeah, because in here I wrote about when I was raped, and it took me 30 years to mention anything about it. And backing up a little bit, my mother a year ago was in a nursing home, and she, in my 66 years, she only twice asked me about my writing. So that's not much validation, but she did in the nursing home. And I said, well, I've got a new book of poetry, but you might not be interested in it. And I said, because one of them is about when I was raped. And she was startled with that. It got her attention. Anyway, so she read it, and there was one poem that she showed everybody about it. Anyway, so I'll read 3 of these that are personal. It's called That Night. I was 18, and this was an acquaintance, and I didn't know that guys would do this to guys. I didn't know. So I was an easy target. I just sort of froze. And I later learned that when children have no defenses, that's what they do. They just freeze. That night, He was on top of me, twice my age, twice my weight, and now, with no underwear, as I was too, removed for massage, he'd said, "Isolated farm boy, socially inept, what did I know of intent?" He, an acquaintance far from home, stopped for the night, mounted me and asked for lube. I froze, paralyzed. What? The handle of a shovel, hoe, or garden rake entered me. Oh God, it hurts, it hurts. He finished, kissed my back, returned to his bed. Next morning, I still felt him inside. And then just generally, as a result of my childhood, I now have PTSD. I call it domestic PTSD because I wasn't in the military, because I probably would have gone berserk, I don't know. PTSD in me. Childhood screaming rings in my ears for over 60 years. I knew my life, existence, a mistake before age 2, but how to end it I had no clue. Screaming continued till 17, leaving when I was blissfully finally alone. No one to care for but my own. Emotional ghosts past tormenting prods into waking or sleeping. Terror all over again and again and again and again and again and again. Others cannot know interior terror, the abyss too deep and dark. I don't like to go, but fall and keep falling. Exhausted it ends, and I wonder when it will hit again. It's the little less, and sometimes I kind of know where I am when it happens, but I'm not fully conscious of that. So the one that sort of summarized my life, and I was very surprised when one of my siblings, I think, told me that my mother read this to people in the nursing home. And I'm a little surprised that she would have done that, and it was marked in her copy of the book. In my life. In my 63 years, I've built a house, remodeled several others, farmed and plowed, disked, raked, and mowed, written award-winning history books, several prize-winning poems, published a book of poetry, several chapbooks, a dozen or so stories, for children or adults, various articles in various countries, cited as an expert and surprisingly quoted, raised 4 children who are productive, constructive members of society, serve the cause of God in regional and national positions, local institutions, and more, as well as civic service, built a short road with a shovel and wheelbarrow, once a librarian, issued title insurance, advised on retirement, as well as supervised a small call center, carried an old woman down flights of stairs out a burning building, and pulled a baby from a lake. Lover and planter of trees and landscaper, baked and decorated cakes as a child and won prizes for them, cleaned house, taken care of hogs, chickens, dogs, and cats, and for most of my life was the family cook. Changed diapers since age 6 and fed babies since age 2. I'm tired. And in response to all that, now that I am retired as well, and this, I think, got published in India. I'm not sure. I can't keep track of those kind of things. To sit. This is my life now. This is what I enjoy now, and I'm learning to enjoy it, because I never could before. To sit. To be able to sit and allow myself that forbidden act to do nothing is such a joy, surprise, and relief. It takes practice, though, after decades, a lifetime of working effort to satisfy others, mother, teachers, supervisors, bosses, and wife. Now I can rest. What a relief. And I'm learning to enjoy myself, and later this month I'm going to take my first vacation and have no commitments and just drive. I have 2 little destinations, but no timetable, and nobody knows where I'm going to be. I think that's just...
That sounds like...
thrilling.
Paradise.
Yes, I hope my car works. That's the only thing to do that. So, you got my life now. And it's going out here.
Thank you so much, Duane. That takes a lot to be so open, and... It's brave, and we really appreciate that you shared that with us. And I know for a fact that people are going to hear this, and they're going to appreciate you as well.
Okay, I hope so. I put it all on the line there.
I know so.
Okay.
I give you my word on this.
Well, I think the biggest thing is to know that you're not alone.
You're
when
not.
Things happen. I saw a play written by the son of a friend of mine about a guy that had PTSD. And what he did in the play just blew me away because he had 3 levels of time going on simultaneously. And that's what it's like when these things come. You're living back in that time and you can't stop it. That's the hard part. You can't stop it. And for the first time watching that, I knew that somebody understood. And I went back to my car and I cried for half an hour. I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. It just was such a relief to see that somebody knows what it's like to have all this stuff that keeps going on like a repeat loop. And you can't stop it. It's just there. It goes until it's in. And I couldn't talk about it because, I'd heard about it, but I didn't know anybody else with it. Although since then I have met a friend who had it more seriously than me, and he would truly, truly not know where he was. I had some awareness. So it's nice to know you're not alone because things happen. And this is not a really comforting, supportive society.
No.
This is not a society where you can say, I had a really bad dream last night and I need help handling it. It's your thing to do. Keep away from me. And so like the rape thing, I didn't talk about that for 30 years. And I was finally able to write about it. And so I still don't talk about it, but it's out there now because
writing it down helps you with that.
And there was a video on YouTube or someplace called If It Happens to You Don't Know Until It Happens to You about campus rape. And I watched that and I cried because it was the same thing. Somebody knows. It can happen. You can't anticipate or expect it. It just happens. And it's horrible.
My hope is that for you, writing helps. And I'm going to assume
I'm still alive.
Yes.
I've been suicidal many times, but I'm still alive. And so if it helps somebody know that, you can live through this and you can do something with this, you can let other people know they're not alone. Maybe that's the best thing to do because I didn't know. I thought I was the only one, which is really insane, but you don't have anything to compare with. And we don't talk about those things. So you don't know. So now society is beginning to be able to talk about it. And I think that's really helpful and hopeful. And so if I'm able to be part of that conversation and help people, then I'm glad. And it gives me a reason to have stayed alive.
Thank you, Duane.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
That was Duane Herrmann, everyone. And keep a lookout. He has his books of poetry.
Oh, they're both available on Amazon.
Both available on Amazon. Prairies of Possibilities and Iconographical 173, as well as your most recent publications.
Well, the short stories will be Instator Gleg, and my science fiction story is Escape from Earth, and that's Amazon too. So go for it.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And now for our listener submission from Wichita poet Linda Imbler. Linda is an internationally published poet. Her poetry collections include Big Questions, Little Sleep, Lost and Found, and The Sea's Secret Song. She is a Kansas-based Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominee. Linda's poetry and a listing of her publications can be found on lindaspoetryblog.blogspot.com. When not writing, Linda is an avid reader, classical guitar player, and practitioner of both yoga and Tai Chi. In addition, she helps her husband, a luthier, build acoustic guitars. Linda enjoys her 200-gallon seawater reef tank, wherein resides her 18-and-a-half-year-old yellow tang. A retired teacher who began writing in earnest in January 2015, Linda believes that poetry, written with a kind hand, truly adds to the beauty of the world. Much of this beauty she feels can be found in the night sky, and her telescope helps her to confirm this belief. Obbligato. I love to sit on the lake shore and watch the soft float of the birds. One day I saw a bevy of swans, 15 in all. I saw a young male swan softly glide amidst the group. This beautiful cob, with his long neck and white plumage, feathers that looked as delicate as ice shavings. He then used his honk to get her attention, that young female pin. She paired with him that day and every day thereafter. They became each other's must-have. For 20 years I watched as she called their young back home with her sharp, shrill bark. I watched as he hissed away threats with his wheezing breath. I watched as he trumpeted to protect their family. I heard all the songs of those swans' symphony within those years, save one. And then, that daybreak, I watched as he awoke the rising sun, but not the rising of his mate. I watched as he touched her feathers, now as cold as ice shavings. And I heard the obligato, woven by grief, within his swan song, as it became his must-do. Lycanthropy. The moon waxes and night falls, as does his mood. The transition begins with the first sip of moonshine. The gentle nature of her snuggle bunny transforms. It devolves quickly from subtle to noisy. Words now have teeth, spoken from behind fangs that bite with brutish nips. His howling and growling, snarling, roaring beast emerges. He beats his chest and pounces, claws as hands once gentle twist arms and hair in her gut. Emotions bounce off the wall and she follows. Confusion reigns and the animal stink of both prey and predator grows stronger as she learns to fear the rising of the moon and the rising of the bottle. Batman recalculating. As children, they did not know their mothers were grooming them to be Batman, giving them capes of compassion and utility belts of courage, teaching them to always rise above their problems, to raise their grades, to raise their children, to look up, to reach for the stars, to reach for the pie in the sky. Today, the power of that high rise, once more luring them upward, turns deadly when the planes hit. Today, all they can do is descend 90 minutes and 68 levels of stairs, carrying a wheelchaired woman. They make it out all right before the towers fall. All the time going down, hearing their mother's voices reminding them, do what is right although your knees shake, do what is right although your arms tremble, do all you can, even if it could take you into the ground. Ensorcelled within the moonlit eyes of Paco. Her silly putty face worn, the dowager's palm was greased as the lightning strikes the beast. Rivulets of blood seep from sacred dogs. The starry-eyed loon, the wild-eyed child running through the streets, stopping the second before those dogs pounce, smelling the tears. She is in the childhood tent, feels the old hocus-pocus from outside, the hiss and blast of truth. But the shaman has not lost his grip, much quieter next time, the fight much less painful. Just tell the truth, give no hypnotic promises, no serpentine ballet woven between real and false. She thinks, she feels, he promises, I'll create the moon tonight. He does. He does. Linda's poem Obligato can be found in her poetry collection, The Sea's Secret Song, as well as being previously published in Vox Poetica. Batman Recalculated has been published in Tuck Magazine as well as Apricity. Lycanthropy can be found in the Rye Whiskey Review as well as Siren's Call e-zine. And lastly, Ensorcelled Within the Moonlit Eyes of Paco can be found in Aerial Chart. Thank you so much for submitting to us, Linda. And if you or someone you know would like to submit to the show, by all means, do so. We want your weirdest, we want your blandest, we want your most mediocre, we want your most experimental, we want your gushy love stories, we want your terrorizing horror, we want it all. Feel free to submit any pieces that you would like to our Facebook page, Sunflower Sutras, and if Facebook isn't your style, then feel free to submit pieces to tara.bartley@yahoo.com. Thank you all for listening. And thank you, Linda and Duane, for making this episode extra special. So long, and farewell.